Jason, I'm I guess we would say a longtime reader, first-time questioner.
Yep.
Like many in the room, a devoted reader of the newsletter. But I don't think I realized until recently that it's going to be, it already is, and it's going to be a big business. So what is the business of Media REDEF?
Sure, so it's not big yet. The idea was that if you look out online, the dream has really come true with every piece of content that maybe has ever been made and anything that's coming, and it's a little overwhelming. And I thought that our audiences would love to have a friend in sort of different sectors that would go out there and do a little bit of the DJing for them and pick stuff. And with lots of you in the audience and with others, we built out a great trust. And the idea behind REDEF has always been that there were these merging worlds where media and technology and communications and everything was sort of blurring. So they're not specifically about just media or music or fashion or sports. It's about how all these worlds are colliding. So our ideas are, we have Media REDEF, which many of you read on a daily basis. We've just launched slowly sports REDEF, music REDEF, and fashion REDEF. And the idea is that you're going to have these up to 15 different curated information streams. And from a business standpoint, that's been a big debate inside the company and certainly with our investors as to what the model should be. I think I'm going to charge a subscription fee, and the reason to try that out is I think that we're reaching a moment now where people are paying for convenience. They understand the level of a concierge service that we've become, no different than like services like Postmates that do things for you. And while advertising is a great model, what I am concerned about when it comes to advertising, not to say that we won't do some of it, is that you get on sort of a treadmill of traffic. And you have sites like BuzzFeed run by Jonah and other sites that are just so massive. I don't know with the things that REDEF picks, which are usually long form journalism, documentary film, that kind of stuff, that we're going to have 50 million people. And in order to get 50 million people, you may need to do some things with your content that aren't necessarily in the ethos of what REDEF wants. So we're going to try subscription. It's not going to devalue the service at all or make it any worse. It's going to be actually much better. An app and a website are coming out next month. So you'll have it all in one contained system. You'll be able to save things for later, a lot more functionality. And we hope that it's so indispensable to the people in this room and our audience that they're willing to pay for maybe a cup and a half of a Starbucks coffee on a monthly basis. And there's a great line that I read from Barry Diller where it said, it's not enough anymore to just be smart, you need to be curious. And really at the crux of REDEF is curiosity. And we're trying to push you beyond what you think you're interested into all sorts of different subjects. And the fact that you trust us is a big relationship, and we think that a nominal fee is worth it. If it doesn't work, failure on the internet is just another step to success. So we'll figure out something. I'll spin it. You'll
spin it.
Yeah.
Or you'll pivot.
Yeah.
Tell me when we might see that subscriber wall.
So I've decided that we're going to go and do a small beta launch with 50,000 or so people, and we'll allow some invites. I'd like to get some data in because, frankly, the data in the newsletter business is not fantastic. And newsletter delivery is a headache all its own. So now that we'll have a website and an app, we have lots of analytics. I'd like to know who the audience is a little more. I'd like to play around with some functionalities and get the bugs out, and then probably within the first quarter we'll go there. That's another way for me saying I'm freaking scared.
Does that mean my Media REDEF newsletter goes away in the first quarter? Maybe there's a free version, a paid version?
Yeah, I don't. Freemium concerns me just because of the businesses that I look at. The massive freemium businesses, if you get like a 1% to 3%, sort of close rate, that's massive. So again, that brings up sort of the traffic issue. It'll be a slow transition. I've learned from other sites like the New York Times or whatever that you don't just throw down these what I call Star Wars walls where the just slams on you. And I don't mind paywalls at all. I pay for lots of subscriptions and I donate a lot of money to other services. It's just the way that you implement them and the way that you explain them. Right. So you'll be able to get it via newsletter. You'll be able to get it via the app, which will be the ultimate experience, and then via the web on multiple screens, so mobile web and whatnot, and then eventually we'll do Android. So it'll be very, very slow, and we'll probably give months and months for free with a countdown, so it'll never be a surprise to you. And then if you don't want to pay, then you just, we'll stop the knowledge.
Stop the knowledge.
Yeah. As I always say, don't be allergic to knowledge for $10. Come on. That's not the slogan.
Or the price point maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe a little lower, a little higher.
At first, I had gone out to friends at Netflix and other places and asked about subscription. You can confuse with tiers. You can confuse your audience. So the idea that we had was, an all-you-can-eat every single channel for a fee, and then once we get the data in, you watch these things like my friend Gordon and his business, analyzes this stuff for newspapers and paywalls. Paywalls are very much a mathematical thing. You understand how they work relatively quickly. You see where the fall-offs are, and then that's how you introduce pay tiers to see if you can push more people into the funnel. I just don't want to. I like very specific kinds of offers where this is what you get for one price and you're good to go. Not to say that we won't do deals over time. And we are looking at different ways. While going into individuals will be an organic type of way, we've been approached over the years by big corporations asking for seat licenses. And the reason being is that it's not enough just to read trade magazines anymore. I think what these companies would like to see in the ad business and the technology business and certainly in media is how do you take ideas from other industries that are working and apply them to your own rather than watching 3 guys on a stage talk about VOD. It's like that's like ambient. So that's somewhere where I'm really going to focus my time, and there'll be some other kinds of services, maybe custom curation for corporations and some speaking stuff that we'll do.
Let's talk a little bit more about subscriber revenue. My upper middle class complaint about media is that it's not easy enough to pay for all the things I want to pay for.
Sure.
I'm not sure that the vast majority of the people out there feel the same way, but do you think about how easy you need to make it in order to pay? Do you think about making it as easy as possible to
Absolutely.
sign up?
Yeah, I mean, you cannot let greed get in the way of making it a seamless experience. So if you look, like for example, a lot of people complain about Apple's 30%. It's a big chunk, you pay that for people to pick up your garbage. And the reality is that you are going to hurt yourself often if you don't work with like a company like Apple. And I've seen lots of people go backwards on, a lot of the publishing industry fought them.
Right.
But if you look at like Touch ID on the phone and the fact that they have your credit card, you don't want to give up 30% to anybody, but it is a nice, seamless experience.
Right.
And then there are other companies that you can work with. There's the Tiny Passes of the world, Gordon's company, and others being introduced to, have, sort of as frictionless as possible paywalls. The problem that I see often with the publishing industry is they focus on what you're going to get for free and what you're going to pay for. So all of a sudden you share a link on Twitter and I click on it and then I'm somehow over my limit, which, oh God, I didn't remember to keep count of the thousands of things that I read all day long. And this wall comes down, doesn't show me the article. There's a grid with 70 choices in there. And I'm sure someone in business development thought that was a good idea, but there's nothing human about it. And that's where people just turn around. There's so much optionality on the internet that you have to get them immediately. And I think, again, I don't know all the figures in my head about how paywalls have done, but I have to say, like, if I had to compare them, the New York Times did a good job of making it sort of gradual, and it wasn't just a shutdown immediately. And the News Corps of the world, who are my old family, at Dow Jones and the Wall Street Journal, I think they're coming out of their cocoon where, at first you would go and link somewhere and you'd just see a key on the article. That's not exactly inviting. They might as well put barbed wire on it, But now they're showing you a little summary or giving you a little taste. And then the other thing I think that the publishing industry has to look at is that you were one of the pioneers of blogging at the New York Times, and yet we as audiences don't distinguish between what's in the paper and what the blog is. So if you go to most papers that have a tremendous, sort of presence in blogging, somehow that stuff's free, but the stuff that's in the paper isn't. And I assure you that's lost on us. So, these are some of the things that I'm starting to talk about with the people that we put, or the publications that we put in, but I can't guarantee you at REDEF that the link that we chose is going to be something that's free. I learned this when I was at Slingbox. If you actually look ahead of you and see all the problems, you would throw up and turn around. You have to do your business development a little bit like sort of staring at the ground, just keep moving forward. And if you look at businesses like Uber, I think they're perfect examples of someone who is sort of suspending disbelief of what the possibilities are, because every town or city that Travis goes into, he gets sued into oblivion, and yet he keeps prevailing. And I think you have to have a little of that when you're dealing with thousands and thousands of publishers.
Why did you start the newsletter to begin with? It was partly just because you wanted to find all these links and read all these links, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a curious guy. I grew up in New York City. I have to credit my my mother, who passed away this year, with she once said to me, and I think to her great regret, if you don't understand something, always ask why. That was one of the things she did regret at the end. And what had happened, there was actually a moment where MTV had bought my company. I was, sort of settled in the company. It was my first job at 28. I had started the company, my company out of college. And then all of a sudden, March or May come around in 2000 and the bubble bursts, so to speak. So all of a sudden, we're the new jacks, the cool things in the company, and now it's back to a television company and they're firing everybody. So I tend to preach about things sometimes, and I don't think anyone wanted to hear a preacher. So I just started sending articles around to the executives of things that were going on. Because, listen, the media business is a wonderful environment, but there's also a lot of sheep. And if I could take advantage of those sheep by seeing what other people were doing, maybe I can get our strategy going. And it ultimately turned into a compendium of links. And then my high school buddy, Ben Silverman, had gotten a job at NBCU. And he mentioned in Forbes that what he reads to stay up to date was my newsletter, and that's really how it took off. So it was a really, really fine-toothed plan, as you can see. And I've executed it perfectly.
What is it about the wiring of a brain like yours to find all these links that come from different places and from different categories, and then put them all into the same sort of?
I mean, it's hard.
Wow.
I've had what I call acquired ADHD.
Acquired.
That I've gotten over time. I mean, I'm just really curious, and there was something about the internet where you can go down the rabbit hole.
Oh, yes.
That always, I love. So the idea was, when you grow up, you have a certain amount of friends, and they're into certain things, and they may not be into the same things, or they may not be into them at the same depth. And when I got on the internet for the first time, which was honestly through AOL, I'm not ashamed to say, and then found Usenet, where there were other crazies like me, who were looking for, the Bugsy Malone soundtrack on CD or something. And
I logged in through Prodigy, but I have the same Usenet memories.
Exactly.
Yes,
And I love the idea that if you saw something on TV or if you were reading an article, you could go and go deeper.
Right.
I have some of my staff here, and we went to go see Interstellar the other day. And
what's your one-line review of Interstellar?
listen, I thought
Everybody hates it.
Who are those people?
The internet. The internet hates the movie.
My friend Matty Karras that does music and sports over there thought it was abominable, but he's been docked pay. Yes, I think. Yeah, true. Well done, Matty. I hope that makes the rant today. I will say this. I think it was everything that a movie should be. It was flawed in many ways. But you have to suspend disbelief because it's a movie.
It's a thrill ride.
And I loved,
Anyway.
that to me is the perfect example of going to the movie and then losing 4 days of blackness into Wikipedia.
Right. Reading.
Yeah.
Right.
So I have now read maybe 30 articles about, and last night I have to say, I said this on Twitter last night, but if you watch the Carolina Panther game, the offensive line wanted to make you leave Earth, go into a wormhole at Saturn and find a new planet to live on. And that would have only happened had I not seen Interstellar. So to me, it's a think movie. You're talking about it constantly, and that to me is Hollywood at its best.
That's success.
So
let's go back to Usenet. So
and if you don't like Interstellar, by the way, that's actually where an opinion is wrong.
All right, but let's go back to Usenet. You can go so deep now.
Yep.
And find other people like you.
Yep. And that's what happened. I mean, it's unbelievable to me. I see a lot of my friends here that I met on the internet. I mean, it's a different way, and we met because of what we were into, and met up in the real world. So this idea that I could learn on my own. I didn't really do well in high school. I went to a big high school in Riverdale here, It was competitive. I was a smart kid, but I didn't like testing. I liked conversation around stuff. I wanted to know more and talk about it. I didn't like just facts, which is the way that I thought the school worked at the time. And the internet was where you could have a conversation about stuff with people that were really interested in those things, and you could learn in your own time. And I have to say, like, even as a student, going from high school to college, where college and the internet was just happening, my grades went through the roof comparatively because learning became fun for me on my own time, and it wasn't a task or a chore or something that if I didn't do, I would get into trouble. And I love that about it, and it nurtured things that I was interested in terms of art or music or all these things that, you know, my mom, you know, sort of exposed me to. But now all that information was there. It doesn't replace going out to the museum and seeing things on their own. You know, I don't know about going to the movie theater anymore. I don't know how. Most of our homes are centered around a television, and I still can't watch a day and date movie at home. But that's satiated my curiosity and why I want to go into all these different subjects. So, you know, when you go out and do investor interviews, you know, they'll say to you, so I love what you do on media REDEF. What are you thinking about oil and gas? And I'm thinking, well, I'm not really passionate about oil and gas. But when we run out of my passions, you know, maybe you know someone in oil and gas. So that's, I mean, REDEF is really knocking off some of the other things that we're going to do. We're looking at design right now because we're living in a design culture really in every industry. Education is a big thing. Health, I think, is going to be a big thing, not only from legislation, obviously, but also from business and then technologies. Those are some of the new sectors we're looking at.
Is it audacious at all to believe that you can make curation into a business on its own? Do you see other models or examples of this out there?
It's insane. I would say that a lot of the businesses that I learned from and grew up on, whether they be Showtime or HBO or MTV, essentially started from a curation standpoint. They were curating other people's product. They contexted them with promos and you know, ways of packaging stuff, and then slowly moved into their own programming. And if you watch, you know, Matt's here from Showtime. If you watch Showtime now, like, you don't think of the movies when you think of Showtime. You think of Ray Donovan and The Affair and all these great shows. Same for Plepler at HBO, and certainly MTV, who gets crap for not playing music videos, even though music has moved into another medium and is available everywhere. It's known for hits. So we have introduced a little bit of our own content more. We're calling them originals, that our audience is writing around the sectors that they're interested in, and they're super you know, cool. And we've gotten a lot of feedback from, you know, TV and film studio bosses on them. But to me, I'm looking at this as, listen, the world, there's an infinite amount of content out there. We have a point of view. We're not programming based off of traffic. My audience has pure interest just like everybody else. So if Miley Cyrus is at the VMAs, I assure you that's going to be the #1 clicked on thing. We just don't put it in. It's really about our curiosities. And I think that there's a nice group of people. It may not be a $1 billion business, but it could be, you know, a $50 or $100 million business. The subscriptions are good and our churn is low. And that's the audaciousness of thinking.
Will the originals be what you're known for way down the road?
I think there's a couple of things we're looking at. I think originals will be a bigger part of what we do, but not on a ratioed basis in terms of everybody else. My theory
It's like
is
Netflix. They're known for House of Cards, but people are really there watching everything.
they're watching kid stuff.
Right.
So my theory is via you, via David Carr, via all these writers that we follow, and frankly, the individuals at companies that are now writing in deeper ways than ever before. Joe writes, you know, columns all the time while running a business. It's been written, it's been filmed, it's been recorded. We just have to find it for you. I don't know that REDEF is really contributing anything by creating anything new other than some of the research-based stuff that we do, and certainly our completely stream of consciousness, unconnected rants and raves that people seem to like. We're celebrating the fact that there's all these ideas out there. And the other thing is that we include stuff that we do not agree with personally, because my big problem with personalization technologies and filters is we're being run by technology companies now. I mean, that is what's shaping our future. They look at data. Data to me is a wonderful thing, but it optimizes a current behavior. It doesn't necessarily introduce a new one. So I think that the hybrid groups, the media and technology firms that are going to rule the future, are the ones that really have respect for the human eye and the human hand, as well as implementing data. And that's how we come at it. And I think we're doing some video stuff. So I've shot a pilot for a REDEF show where I'm sitting down and talking to a lot of the people that we cover, more in a conversation rather than in a Q&A. And then I'll geek you out here, but we are working on a conference for something that I was really interested in when I was a kid. So if you guys watched PBS, which I'm sure was a big part of your Friday nights, there was something called the Fred Friendly seminars when I was a kid. You could watch them online. And I love the idea. It was basically they brought together people from disparate backgrounds and set up on a dais in front of a crowd, some sort of problem to solve that was likely based in the real world, but they changed the names to, Brian Stelter Stan or something like that. And working through those problems with not only people from one sector, but people from other sectors, that's super interesting to me. I hold dinners often where we do that, and that's going to be a big part of our future and something I think we'll be known for.
Sounds like a good cable news show, too.
Absolutely. Maybe you can speak to your friend Jeff Zucker,
So
he doesn't pay any better than I do, I don't think. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Let's bring up the critique of all curation and all aggregation, which is you're so busy curating, there's not going to be as many people down below actually making the raw materials for
Sure.
it.
Well, it's been my experience that, the internet is a big ocean that never runs out of fish, so to speak. So everyone is creating. I think that we don't get into the way of the model of the publishers. So we're not reblogging. We're not hosting the content. If Rafat at Skin, Skiff puts out a great article on travel and why the seats don't go back or they go back too much. I've been reading great stuff on his site. I am an investor, by the way. We send it to him. He created that content. It's his content. I don't need to reblog his story and take value away from him. In the movie, what was the New York Times movie, the documentary?
Page One.
Page One. If you guys see Page One, which is fantastic, there's a moment where David Carr and Michael Wolff are having an epic debate. It's a lot of fun. And he holds up a paper and he says, without us, here's what an aggregation site would look like, and it had holes in it. We respect that. We credit the author, we credit the source, we send the traffic to them. And I can't control the way the publishing business or the video business is going to. We look at ourselves as champions. And I will say this, we're not big, but we're very influential. So what we've shown is that when we share something, it gets to other influencers and it actually spreads that way. So we think we're very positive. The inevitable question is, are we going to split any revenue with publishers? And I'd say that's not in the plans. The plans, what we're doing is a service on the internet that points out great stuff. We don't guarantee you free passage. You don't have to read it, but we also don't take away value from them. And we're not rewriting anything. So that's my defense of that.
So two more questions before we go to the audience.
Yep.
And the first is on Obama and Title II yesterday and net neutrality. Is the internet going to be governed like a utility in the future? And what's that mean for people like you?
Listen, I certainly am a fan of what the president came out and said. I'm very concerned that, and I have to look back, so don't take me on my word on this, but where was he for 6 years on this topic? I think Barry Diller did a much better job.
Yeah, the White House would say that he said all the right things, but never said Title II until yesterday.
It was a big deal. I think it's very important. I think that if the internet bifurcates, you're stifling lots of voices. I think there's so many things from a social impact point of view that evens the field with the internet. It's something I've been involved in charity-wise, like making sure that kids that are under 10 years old. I work with a place called CFY that have computers. They have net access. They'll be able to learn like I did in my own time, but I had the means. I think those things are very, very important. I know it scares big media. I heard that, did the stocks take a tumble yesterday?
4, 5, 6% down?
Listen, inefficiencies like you're seeing on the internet via crowdsourced funding or any other businesses, if you have inefficiency in your business, people are coming to get you. And I think that bifurcating the internet creates more inefficiencies and is not great for
Inefficiencies leads us to cable TV.
Yeah.
It's been a slowdown in advertising this year, and there's all these fears about subscribers now with cord cutting, which isn't really happening in a big way, but everyone fears it's about to. What do you think?
Well, listen, there is nothing I get more value out of than my cable subscription. I basically picked up the phone and said, give me everything but hockey. And by the way,
finally a champion of the bundle right here.
I may get there. And listen, I've worked at Slingbox, MTV, and Dish. So I've hung out with all the criminals, and some of them really, really smart. And my feeling is that I don't think that people really understand the economics of cable television. It's easy to say. I was over with Richard Plepler at HBO the other day, and he's like, everyone writes about how Game of Thrones should be a la carte. Game of Thrones costs, $98 million or $108 million every season, and as Mr. Plepler said, iTunes isn't paying for that. That stuff is ancillary. So the entire business that you guys use from Netflix and pay for download is totally subsidized by the cable business. My issue with the cable business is that their product sucks. It's not a great interface.
Right. I still can't sling TV. I still can't.
Well, you can on a sling box.
I can on a sling box. I can't on Time Warner Cable. Right.
Everything, in all fairness, is about leverage. So I think that when you hear media companies complain that kids are leaving, they could do TV everywhere apps. They could put their stuff online. And I think the greatest way to keep you within the cable subscription in a good way is to have authenticated content in the kinds of ways that you want to get them. So the problem is right now, you go to get the authenticated content on VOD right now on a cable system, and it's usually 5 trailing episodes. So who comes into a show that way?
Right.
Certainly if it's a serial. Here's what I think is going to happen in cable.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of transition. For a long time, there's been a lot of inefficiencies. So, I'll give you a story, but if you were at MTV and you walked into Time Warner and they would say they want MTV, Comedy Central, and Nickelodeon, and they'd say nice, but you're getting VH1 Polka. They basically would package all your channels together.
Right.
And some people didn't want VH1 Polka, but you had leverage. I think what's happening now is that the cable companies have introduced lower tier subscriptions for lower prices. There's a fight to get your channels in there. If you have tremendous ledger like a Disney with ESPN, you probably get as much as you can in there. But I think within the next 5 years, you're going to see at least 10% of the cable channels that exist today fall off of cable. My prediction is that either a Vimeo or a YouTube is going to start to do minimal carriage deals with them and then try to work their way back up the hill with bigger ones. And I think that some of those companies will also try to do over the top. And for the first time, you'll realize how niche that audience was.
Yes, most will fail. Yeah.
And if you speak to Charlie Ergen or Brian Roberts or any of these guys, they've known for a while that they're paying for channels that people are not watching. Right. The intrinsic value of that channel to the company is never exposed because it's just a bundle of a package. So I think that your cable system is going to be smaller. I think the cable systems will be willing to run internet channels without carriage fee, so they'll have them exposed in their areas. And then from a TV perspective, I think one of the things facing the industry is that if you're running a channel, you need to own what's on your air, or you need to own the rights to make money on after airing. So I think there's going to be a lot of pressure in some cases on production companies who their lifeblood is selling to TV channels. And now you see everybody's got their signature series. And if you look at like a show like Walking Dead or Breaking Bad on AMC, it's a great show, it's a hit, but it's owned by Sony. So what do they do when they want to sell to Netflix and other things? You either have to make the investment up front to own all those rights, or you need to own your programming. So I think you're going to see a lot of distress in there. And what I do like about what's happening in cable now is finally because of Hulu, because of Netflix, because of Sling, because of all these sort of ancillary things of innovation that happen on the outskirts, the guides are improving.
Yes.
You got to give Comcast credit for Xfinity and what they're doing there. It's not perfect yet. You have to give DirecTV credit for how they've built out their VOD systems. And then finally, on the ad side, it's a really, really hard proposition for a cable company to sort of, or a content company to deal with, in that the biggest payer the biggest subscriber of their content is also sort of the biggest technological Luddite in the world. So when these companies go online, they can target their ads, they can charge great CPMs because of it, they don't waste inventory, and yet when you're doing a 5-year, probably billion-dollar deal with a cable company and you're still running on old ad systems and you can't insert directly to the user, you can't target, that's hurting the ad industry. And yet on the flip side, if you talk to a film studio, if you talk to Beth Comstock at GE or any of these places, they'll still say that no other medium gives you lift like television. Internet's going to get there, but you can get the same audiences online, but you will not get the same response yet.
So let's go to the audience. See
I have
where
no
there are
opinion on that area.
questions. Now, I like what you're saying, which is evolution, not revolution, in a lot of these things.
Cable's not falling off a cliff
Right.
anytime soon. And we have to start looking at TV as just the emanation of where that content's coming from. Though Netflix is changing that up a little. If I'm the head of a TV channel, Leslie Moon said this on your show on Sunday. He goes, my job is to find audiences wherever they are. And Blake Krikorian used to say that, basically Sling is an on-ramp for video. Who cares what screen it's on? And I assure you that the youth of today don't distinguish where they're watching stuff. They couldn't even remember.
No, but they do want to watch a lot of it. Let's go to questions. Let's see who's going to go first here.
Matthew Blaine.
Jace, just simple question.
Yeah.
How many hours consuming media a day?
Dude, that's like a psychiatrist question.
The math?
Can I lay down?
The math
that's
doesn't
great.
work. Every day you watch like 26 hours of TV.
I'm going to cry right now. It's a problem. As you can see, I am not in startup shape. So, it's like one of those comeback, movie films. I do a lot of stuff at the same time, so I confess that maybe I'm on Twitter while I'm watching Ray Donovan, and that's the acquired ADHD thing. So I don't know if any of you have this, but I have rewind syndrome. So while I don't watch shows without an iPad or a computer, how many times do I have to rewind?
Oh, funny.
And the issue with like Matt shows or Richard Plepler's shows is like you have to pay attention because there's like nooks and crannies in those shows. Where there's great networks like USA, which I call like a treadmill network. Like I can miss every third word and yet I'm still entertained and I know exactly what happened. So I do most of my my internet while I'm watching the treadmill shows. And I do a lot of rewinding on your network. What did I miss? So it's a problem. I have to stop sleeping with my phone. No one's emailing me at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I will say that there is a point, honestly, where the extra work doesn't pay off anymore. So I'm trying to shut down a little early and give myself maybe 30 minutes of quiet a day. So that's how it works. Yes, the math doesn't work. But by the way, weekends are big. So you don't care that I watch on DVR. Some of the other people in the room maybe.
Right.
But I do marathons. Like I suspended disbelief for 8 hours. Last weekend I watched 8 Scandal episodes, which is the nuttiest show on television. Joe.
Taylor Swift. How do you feel about her pulling off of Spotify? And does it surprise you that she pulls off of Spotify and not YouTube, where most people go for free on-demand music?
YouTube is the biggest music site on the internet, bar none. I think people don't realize that. If you ask a kid, like I was out with Blake Krikorian, who's the CEO of Sling, and we're out to lunch with his daughter, who's 12, and I said, what do you got Spotify, right? No, they said we go to YouTube. So my personal opinion on Taylor Swift is, I think it's half PR stunt, and the fact is that it probably did drive sales for a superstar that's a must-have record. I don't think it has any impact, and it would hurt an artist. And I also think that the anger towards Spotify is ridiculous. Daniel Ek loves music and loves artists. He goes where the licenses are. And the record labels are going to be brought to the forefront now and having to explain how things get divvied up and what the rates are. And Bono came out and said something about this week, and I think he's 100% right that they need to question. And listen, maybe the fees go up, but streaming is here. I mean, whether you like it or not, it's a transition period. We're not going back to it. And I think that, unfortunately, I think the bump in sales that she got is going to be confusing for some. And I assure you that there were a lot of backroom. Every manager in the music business is looking at that. And someone else held back from Spotify yesterday. I think who was it? Jason Aldean.
Yeah.
No, that's going to create waves.
He's going to only go VH1 focus.
Yeah. So it's a great conversation to be had. I don't know Taylor Swift, so I don't know how involved she is, and I'm sure it didn't make it made a huge financial difference, but I ultimately think that the labels are going to have to answer for it.
Is that the end of the middleman? I mean, Amazon said book publishers don't need to exist anymore.
Yep.
Is that?
Listen, and a label is a bank and talent and marketing, and they still do a decent job, and the power's with them. I've always hypothesized that at some point, Spotify's in a tough position because They're the #2 payer in the world to labels, and probably soon to be #1 unless Apple gets its stuff going with streaming. And so they're very beholden and tied into the labels right now. If they were starting a service from scratch like SoundCloud, SoundCloud technically just says artists publish up here, and I'm sure they'll have some sort of monetization scheme. There's companies like TuneCore who aggregate independent artists and single artists, and then they give that catalog to iTunes. And that's as direct as a commerce thing will go. I always thought that Spotify at some point would have an artist upload and pricing scheme on their own. There's inefficiencies in that area, and there's quiet around how. And by the way, if you know the history of the record business, this is a format change in fee structures. There's not. They used to send back empty records and all sorts of stuff. Read some books. So that'll get worked out. There's smart people there, and the reality is, music is still the #1 art form in the world. It's listened to more than anything else. It drives, and I think the record business, unfortunately, a lot late realized that they're not in the recorded media business. They're in the anything that makes money off our content business, and they gave away tremendous amounts of value to people for promotion for the sale of a disc that was unlocked that you could rip. Lots of mistakes were made there, Sorry. Anyone?
We have a mic on this side?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, yeah,
Hi.
here we go.
Betty Cohen. In your decision it sounds like you're ruling out ad support and heading towards a subscription
Not at all.
model.
Not at all.
Because
It's
I
a
was thinking,
hedge.
since you have so many influential
Yep.
followers, but I wasn't sure if you ran the numbers or if you haven't really ruled it out. Though.
Listen, one of my weaknesses as a CEO is I'm not really great at numbers. I always feel like I'm still staring at the window of trigonometry class, like I'm not gonna be able to do that. So I am not ruling out ad at all. I'm not ruling out sponsored links. I'm trying to, it's a very Pollyannish way, I think, subscription, of me trying to have no influence on our editorial and really, really stay true to what we're doing and look at growth from that perspective. It may fail. It probably will. Who knows? I don't know. I'm due for a failure. I would not rule out any kind of revenue schema like custom curation, ads in general, sponsored links, sponsorship inside the app. So if an HP wanted to sponsor tech and bring it by, all those things are on the table. It's just I want to try with something that's very simplistic and see if it works. And listen, I have to tell you, like a lot of the VCs in the country read REDEF on a daily basis. They may not touch it with a 10-foot pole because they don't believe in paid content. It's ironic, given that most of the platforms that they invested in grew off of someone's paid content. I just think there's a moment now with Netflix, with people getting TV everywhere into their home, with a la carte purchasing for your kids, where it's become easy. People trust commerce on the internet more, and they're willing to do that. But I may need to look at other models. You look at Skift, and they're doing research and events, and I think that's all probably part of what I'm going to look at. I want to keep it simple in the beginning. So definitely not ruling it out. If anyone from the 4As are here or anything like that,
Thank you for all the mentions.
By the way, one of the pioneers of curated content and
Yeah.
media coverage on the internet, if you ever read paid content, is still the holy grail.
Thank you. The VCs in media, you and I have a lot of views on it.
Who are they? I don't even know who they are.
We have, so your sense of sort of this moment in time where VCs over the last 2-3 years have invested a bunch of money in media, billionaires have invested a bunch of money in media. 2015, from your perspective, do you think it will continue, or do you think this is sort of a moment that's at its peak or end?
Well, listen, I think there's a lot of things that contributed to it. Obviously, there was a lot of legal fighting over the years around piracy and trying to deal with it, and certainly the media companies have made some headway. But now you're starting to see the executives be way more pragmatic, which is like, some of these technologies may be hurtful to us, but let me figure out how I can make it right. So I think that's fueling a lot of it. The reality is, you want to have growth in your broadband. If you want to have growth on your site, you need content. And I think the idea of ubiquity as a whole is happening with media, but I think everyone's siding up. So you're going to see a lot more exclusivity. Windowing is way profitable right now. They're slicing and dicing it up into very, very small windows, are getting shorter. And that's great for revenue for the media companies. It's not such a great user experience. What was on Netflix on Tuesday may not be there on Friday, so to speak. So I do think it's going to continue. I think that there has to be a level of sanity around valuations. So Michael Wolff wrote an article where he brought Vice to task about their valuation given their revenue. Like, listen, Uber's worth $18 billion. Like, this is all funny money right now. Like, you're buying the future. Why should Shane Smith not trump that stuff up as well? So I'm so happy about the Vice valuation, because for the first time it's saying, okay, let's get crazy with media as well. So this is just about, some of these investors, it's about when you get off the train or jump off the train, frankly. I think it's going to continue. I think there'll be some nervousness around when the consolidation happens, when channels start getting dropped, when some of the MCN models don't work out. There'll be pressures on the platform. So, MCNs are a big thing right now, the multi-channel networks on YouTube. That's something that Kinsel and YouTube really nurtured, and now they're going for hundreds of millions of dollars. Some may be bought strategically, like Disney, as a line for talent, as a funnel for promotion, but the revenue shares are not necessarily working for people, so there's going to be pressure there. What happens then? Does Yahoo come into there? I've always thought that Yahoo could be a great virtual MSO, and they should start carrying channels or carrying products like cars or sports. They own the #1 in those categories. So I do think it's going to be a big sector. I don't think it'll be as crazy as technology. And I also think that you're starting, I read yesterday, but I'm also starting to see there's a little cooling off in funding, not just media. There's just so much money out there. You've seen these ideas. What was the idea with the Yo app? Someone typing Yo to each other got a couple $1 million. So the bar is like, limbo, all right? But I think that the fundraising will be affected by the market as a whole, and if anything blows up in the world, then we'll see a little bit of a pullback. But I'm hot on it. I've never gotten away from media, and I don't even think that it's just media. Like, they're hybrids. People are building out interesting technologies with the media, interesting platforms. Some of it, as you and I have discussed, is a little BS, but investors seem to care. But I point out that a lot of the VCs have made money off of the piracy indirectly, and I'd like to see some of these hubs really, nurture either spending on catalogs or actually allowing revenue schemas for people that are creating on their platforms to make money. I mean, I distribute my stuff through Flipboard and Twitter, and it's not my content, so how can they help me make money on the aggregation and the curation? They're not doing a great job yet. So do I need to leave those services in order to have my business? Those are things I have to think about.
We have time for one more question, and you've got the mic.
Great, thank you.
So Gordon Krovitz. So first of all, fabulous that you're focusing on subscriptions. I think it is part of a trend to going back for all forms of journalism, curation, and others, to focusing on readers instead of advertisers, liberating for everybody. I do have a question, though, about the journalism. You've expanded into a number of other verticals.
Yep.
What you do strikes me as so intensely personal.
Yep.
28 hours a day for yourself.
Yes.
How has it been trying to spread that approach to other people? Are there enough crazy people?
I got 2 of them in the room.
Yeah, well, one seems to pass the test. So
Yes. Oh, he's nuts. Didn't like Interstellar.
what's that process like to find people who are kind of like you to do this similar
That
work?
was the #1 question that I got from everybody. We get you, but how do you can't scale Jason. I will say that, we built out some great technologies to help us hunt and gather, but we don't automate. The way that we gather stuff is through RSS, through Twitter, through happenstance, and then we are doing some data processing on major social networks to basically extract what's being shared, run language processing against it, and then make it easier for us to find things by hand. So everything you see in REDEF has been picked by an individual. It just may have been gathered by a machine or a feed structure. Adam Ray, who's, if you raise your hand over here, Adam is a 20-something from Toronto who is a fashion savant. And I wanted to go into fashion as the first vertical because obviously I'm a fashion plate, but other than that, it is a business that truly is going through disruption, piracy, labor issues, all this kind of stuff. And I went around and I interviewed people that I knew, in the fashion business, CEOs of the houses, what was being missed in covering their sector, why wasn't it taken as seriously? And then some of the people that I interviewed, I got a name from Adam, and we talked for, how long was the interview process? It was probably longer than it should have been. 3-ish months. So it started off with us just having a bunch of conversations. Then I asked him to do 2 days of curation as if we were live and explain every single pick and debate it and write a paragraph on what fashion REDEF is. And if you see, all our verticals have equations. They're called interest remixes. So he wrote that, and we clicked, and I thought maybe I found, like I did on Usenet years ago, another nutty, crazy guy. And when he came on, I think we practiced for another 3 weeks, and we would compare at night, and then we went live. And I think that I've really found a process for how I can trust. But when you're a VC, one of the greatest formulas for a VC is an entrepreneur with a track record who's going back into a business he's been in before with people he's worked with before. And curation has been something that I did at Sling, at MTV. I didn't necessarily call it that because I didn't have a bow tie and work in a museum. Curation has taken over. I don't know that's what I called. Matty Karras, I used to run a site called SonicNet, which was the biggest music news site on the internet. He was an editor there and someone who understood my idiosyncrasies, so to speak, and worked for us at our music service at MTV called Urge. And he's passionate about music. He treats all of it with a serious, he used to say it at SonicNet that, for Britney Spears' audience, she's as important to them as, the Smiths would be to their audience, and you have to give it some respect. So when I decided to go into music, he was the first call I made, really. And, I beat him up on the fee. And he decided to join. Then he wanted more money. And I said, well, what else are you interested in? And he goes, sports. And I said, can you do both? Which is tough. It's a long day for him. But he's done it. If you're reading music and sports, I think it's the best curation on the internet right now in both areas. It's very widespread across lots of things, international, in sports, different kinds of ways, but not scores and deals. It's more about the culture and the lifestyle. So I've proven now at least 2 times that I can find those people, and you don't go until you can. And that has impact on a model in terms of how often can you get it done. But I think I'm good there. What I'm concerned about as being a CEO are the things that are really what the new jacks are great at. How do I go viral? How do I grow my audience? How do I have a funnel that I understand without tricking the audience? Those are all the things that I'm looking for in a business partner, and ultimately I'd like to bring on a CEO so I can concentrate on product and programming. And that's the culture that I'm a little older than. And so I'm really learning for the first time. And certainly I wasn't successful at it when I was running MySpace. So I'm still learning.
Let's get you back to your 26, 28 hours of media a day. Jason Hirschhorn, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, John.